Welcome back to another day's music reaction, and today I'm continuing the trend of looking at tracks that are recommended from games that I really am interested in playing myself from series I already love. And I already love Final Fantasy. I've played plenty of the games, at least half of them, the mainline games, and a lot left to go, but there's also a lot of music that, well, I can't react to from Final Fantasy because I already know it and I already love it. But I know there's plenty of great stuff out there that I don't know, and I've heard generally really good things about 16 soundtrack. Some mixed opinions here and there, but for the most part, I've heard people be really favorable about it, and I haven't heard anything from it ever. I've really been on the cusp of starting playing the game, and maybe I finally will soon, but you'll hear me say that about a lot of stuff on this channel just because I'm tending to pick music to react to from games I already know I'm really curious about that are high on my list because honestly, reacting to the music and really getting into some of the tracks is like almost a way to sort of motivate myself to maybe dive in a little sooner to some of these games. So like it sort of serves a dual purpose, helps pique my interest even further for games that I already like really want to play. And that's what this is today. And we're going to be looking at a track for, I assume, an area called the Greatwood that I guess has an alternate name, more artistic name called Lovely, Dark, and Deep. Almost sounds like what the composer's instructions might have been for this piece. Like this should be lovely, dark, and deep for a place called the Greatwood, but also could be just an interesting title. And I assume it's in Japanese originally, as far as the title at least. And yeah, I have no idea what to expect. I mean, it's a little bit evocative in terms of just what the piece is called and the location that it occurs in, I assume. So I have maybe like my own preconceptions about what it might sound like, but I really, have no clue. So let's give it a listen. Okay, so I just want to talk about the initial impression a bit. So obviously, I'm very happy to hear some lovely piano, uh, and just these sort of slow pulses of strings that come in, giving space with this bit of piano. Um, it's really gorgeous, and it is exactly what I might have pictured for this. And honestly, the fact that there's a video that shows this area makes it even harder to not like have a really direct association. In some ways that's an advantage. In other ways, like maybe I would prefer to hear it with absolutely no context. But then again, the name itself gives you a lot of context. I guess the thing that stands out the most to me is that the video alongside it here like helps you give the imagery of like a sunlit forest, uh, a tree line that has rays of sunshine streaming through it. Um, Not particularly bright, but it's there. And to me, like there are different areas in games that are very much like this, that are these sort of sunlit forests. That I would say this almost sounds like a kind of one-to-one of like the exact same like musical trope for these kinds of areas. It would be interesting to almost like make a video about like a dozen of these locations that have like very different musical sound that they're drawing upon. And to me, at least from an intro like this, it's like I'm interested to see where it goes from there. To see like, does it stay in the realm of like it's exactly what you want to support this atmosphere, but might sound too derivative of previous soundtracks for such an area in a game, for such an atmosphere, or does it set like the basis to do some pretty interesting things after that? And already hearing it's bringing in the bass, and giving a little bit more body to it, which is something that I'm also familiar with hearing in a foresty sort of sound like this. But I would also say that if I were in an area like this in a game, this is exactly what I want to hear. Like this is what's going to make me enjoy this area and feel that it's beautiful and feel that it's evocative along with the imagery and the sort of immersive fantasy of being in a woods like this and seeing the play of light and darkness. Like, it just works so well for it. But yeah, I am curious to see if it does, how much it does that makes it seem more different from tracks I've heard in a similar place. Because I almost feel like it just, and I'm saying a lot about 30 seconds, but again, like the most fresh impression comes from, you know, the unexpected way the start of a piece sounds. I would almost believe, like, so far that if you said, like, oh, this is a track from a game you played 15 years ago with a woods area in a JRPG, I'd be like, yeah, I believe you. Which has nothing to do with, like, dated or eras, just that, like, I almost feel like I've heard it before, and I would probably believe that it's something I'd heard and forgotten in a previous game. And yeah, I don't remember if there's something else I was going to say, but we'll keep going and see what it turns into. Almost sounds like a choral effect, but I'm not sure. It's like on the edge of sounding vocal. All right, we're only a minute in. 30 more seconds, I'm already sold. Like, what I was going to say was that I had seen, when I was just looking for recommendations of pieces to check out first, spoiler free, what I did see is a couple complaints about this being a very bland and very generic soundtrack. I won't hide it, that's a Reddit thread. And I didn't read much of it, but I did at least see, like, the premise of it, just to see if people mentioned other tracks in it that they actually did like. And so from the first 30 seconds, I could be like, oh, this is wonderful, but I could see how somebody could say it's generic or bland or potentially derivative. You know, it's a lot. It's, you know, I'm sure that's way overanalyzing that amount of music, but I've said it before and I'll keep saying it, that, like, there is a reason why, like, a lot of analysis can be front loaded. Like, there's a lot of impression you get before you've had the piece defined yet, and everything after that kind of flows from it. Yeah, there's something I really want to check out here, which is, does it use a harp and then mimic that with the keyboard right afterwards? It feels, yeah, it feels like it does. I mean, maybe it's like pizzicato strings, but I'm assuming pizzicato being when you pluck strings instead of bowing across them. And it can sound harp-like. So, you know, for what it's worth, it could be that, but I think because it sounds individual rather than like a group of strings, like a whole section of string instruments, that it seems like a harp, which also is a harp is just such a wonderful, like, again, forest kind of instrument. But you hear this sort of arpeggiated notes that go through on the harp, and then it goes back to this kind of arpeggiation on a piano. And I just kind of liked that transition when I heard it, because, like, you know, piano hits and plucks. Well, piano doesn't pluck. A harpsichord would pluck the strings. But, you know, a piano still has strings inside it. In a way, I, like, wasn't sure if, like, I kind of misheard it or if it, like, blended the sounds together from one to another in, like, a gradient. So it was kind of a nice effect to hear, like, the one structure of that part of the musical layering be done with harp. And then it continues, and now it's in piano, and you almost haven't even noticed that it's transitioned instruments. And it's interesting because it's like, I find it cool to see, like, very intentional choices like that, but that don't necessarily immediately stand out as, like, the why for doing it, or, like, there's not an obvious impact, but you know it's intentional. So it makes you kind of think a little bit about, you know, more in the realm of, like, you know, art analysis of, like, that's, like, subtle, but, you know, why does it so, like, almost unnoticeably, like, pick up the same, you know, structure in the layering, the same layer of the piece switches from harp to piano in a way that, like, is actually fairly similar sounding, but it's clearly a different instrumental choice, and it doesn't amount to a lot, but it's meaningful in a way. So I just noticed that. But there was another thing, it almost, like, stops here on this rhythm. Yeah, it just kind of hits these piano bass notes a little more than you would expect. Um, it doesn't just move on with them rhythmically, but it like hesitates there for a moment. It just kind of changes and resets. It offsets the rhythm a little bit. It's almost like you had to like stop to step over like a knotted root on the ground of the forest floor. Like you had your typical walking pace. You might even say it's an andante or something, you know, if you want to get real, you know, imagery in terms of musical terms. But it's like you're walking through this forest floor and you have to, you know, you don't like fully stop, but you just kind of like your rhythm gets interrupted a little bit for just a moment. You have to stop, step over this root in the ground. You know, maybe that's getting too playful with the analysis, but it just, for something that was so uniform, in terms of the rhythm so far, which is fine. I mean, most pieces of music are, but for it to like just hesitate a little bit there felt really unusual to me. And it made me think of, again, like, what could this be kind of trying to represent? You know, where's the hesitance here? And now we get into this beautiful woodwind melody, which this is where I'm really sold on this piece. Like, this does not sound like other forest tracks to me anymore. That's absolutely stunning. Oh. And these kind of echoing piano notes, which is an effect I love. They use it pretty well in the Celeste soundtrack. It's quite a mood shift, honestly. Okay, we're getting a little epic. A little percussion, some drums. Kind of reminding us we're on a heroic journey. These horns coming in. And back to this kind of unusually synthy, like, chorus sound that I said I almost thought I heard, but I wasn't sure. It was so subtle in the beginning a couple times, but now it's clearly here. It's almost like a nostalgic sound, like it's a kind of retro sound. That's very interesting. But I did want to just shout out the use of the bell here in this transition. Right there. Oh, that's so cool. What I really like about this is that, I mean, it's for a moment or two, it's straying into the, you know, epic score kind of percussion thing, which again is definitely like in a more of a pet peeve area of mine. Like whenever I hear incredible game scores that really just do what can be done with the breadth of expression within a more classical composition idiom, like sometimes it feels like things can lean too hard on that sort of like epic trailer music, like percussion, or overuse it into like a crutch. And then we hear something that doesn't use it at all. It can be, to me, like impressive, like, wow, you can actually create even more feeling because now you have a bigger range. You're not reaching for that top shelf of impact every time. But, you know, it only did it briefly for a moment, really, on the previous transition between sections, which is fine. It's not like this piece has a lot of it, and it has a time and place. But in this case, I bring that up just to say that here, it has kind of this percussion hit with this bell sound, but it just feels so different to me because instead of it building up to that, it builds up to a climax and it has, you know, this like epic percussion that sounds like a drop, and it's just made more epic by some kind of bells and choir or whatever. Like, it actually just like out of nowhere on the beat, it uses the bells and shifts chord, shifts harmony. It just feels like interestingly sudden, which actually makes me like it so much more because it's like a little bit unexpected. It just like suddenly shows up along with a harmonic shift, and that bell sound just sounds so satisfying, and it's kind of an interesting direction to go with the chord. Like there, it just sounds so good, and it's a little bit before you expect it to do that. And now we have this interesting synthy choir. It's an accordion? A lot of interesting instrument choices. That was some bizarre harmonies kind of going on, but I love them. I have to go back like 15 and just see what are these harmony choices. They're a little crunchy. Not sure if it's just the instruments. Damn. Okay. I would not be calling this piece bland or generic. That is so distinctive. Like, I feel like if I was listening to this, if it hit that part with this like odd synthy choir and this like kind of accordion sound in this layering in the harmony, that just like sounds really crunchy for those 3 chords. I feel like every time I heard that, I'd be like, oh yeah, this is the iconic moment in this this soundtrack for the Greatwood. And I would just like probably stop while playing for a second and listen to that bit every time it loops around. Like, that's really distinctive. That's not bland at all. Yeah. Yeah, like I thought I was gonna see if it bore out that this would start doing some really interesting things, and it absolutely has been. Hopefully, if anybody like heard the beginning, they didn't get too turned off by thinking like I wasn't into it or gonna enjoy it. I just, you know, being honest, like, this is where I'm at, and let's see where these expectations go. But loving this now, loving it. And we're back to this. It might be a full loop. I'll listen to a bit more and skim through, and then I won't reanalyze the same parts. But I will give thoughts if I think of anything new. I did notice it does have that echoey piano effect already here on some of the notes. Some of them echo a little, some of them sparkle, but it kind of does it in different spots. It's not uniform. And it really, like, gets a little harsher there. So there's a lot of, again, little choices that are subtle, but they're done for a reason. Is there a little bit of guitar, maybe? Very quietly? Can't tell if that's like guitar strings being strummed in the background. I really, really like that melody. It's so satisfying. I think that might be my favorite melodic moment in this. This woodwind melody. It's just a really well written melody. And the harmony with it just is just right. Yeah, just such a satisfying little, just a little bit of a crunchy moment. It's just so addictive. Like, I feel like it's just written so well for that instrument there. Okay, it definitely is a full loop. Ooh, I didn't hear that before. This is like a chromatic dissension in the string support here. Oh, and there's something very Final Fantasy about that as well. I wish I could, again, think of an exact example. Right there. Let me go back and catch it one more time. Yeah, just that chromatic stepping down of those background strings. I don't know what I'm thinking of, but it feels like there's something quite Final Fantasy about that. And like there, it does the same motion, but it doesn't step down chromatically. It just steps further. And then yeah, it brings this section where it brings in these drums, and it brings in these horns, and it reminds you in a, you know, a bit of a warlike way that like, hey, we're on an adventure. Like, this might be some action here. It's not straying into battle theme, but it's just a reminder that like some motion here. But yeah, then there's that beautiful bell. We get to this interesting like synth chorus, accordion, maybe two different sounds, maybe the same sound. And I like that I don't know for sure. Piano use here is kind of unexpected. Oh god, those chords are so fun. Oh, they're so fun. It's gotta be my favorite moment here. Am I gonna have to make a new playlist category? Is this gonna be category number 4? I wonder. Okay, well I did end up analyzing a little bit through the loop, but that was fun. Man, I think I like that a lot better than I even expected to. Well, I picked it because it sounded like something appealing, but man, it had some real highlights. I'm going to just play it quietly in the background while I do a conclusion. Yeah, that was really great. I'm glad I picked this piece. Like, I mean, I don't know if I'd say I'm like, you know, blown away or anything, like absolutely in shock by this music. But it's not a piece that's meant to do that, obviously. Like, you shouldn't be probably, you know, blown over by a beautiful forest theme. And as far as what's possible with a piece like this, I think it really does an admirable job being something original, being something that draws, you know, definitely on the musical tropes you expect to find in this kind of setting, which is a big part of what game music often is trying to do and be. I still really love game music, and this can be a whole video topic another time. Something I quite love about game music is that it has the freedom to do a lot within its confines. It's not usually, unless it's for a cutscene, it's not as temporally locked in step the way that music for cinema is. In that way, it can be closer to classical music than film scores because it has more room to be composed structurally within just an ambient space. And there are classical pieces that are character pieces or mood pieces or ones that are setting even an environment. They're absolutely forest pieces and stuff like that. And there isn't always something inherently that even makes those any different as far as what the composer is able to do. It's only that in a classical piece, there might be a little more freedom to choose that topic of what the setting is, whereas for a game, a composer's work, part of it is to know, I need to find a way to capture musically the feeling of a forest like this. And the results of that job can be, well, what do I draw upon that actually is fitting? I can't just write anything I want, really, for a forest. In a way, you could, and there are going to be games that have a beautiful forest and they sound unlike anything else, and there's a reason the composer chose that, and that the game developer or producers or whatever were okay with that direction and liked it too. But typically, like, part of it is they want it to also be part of a whole work of art, something that has these different media elements, and that they should work in, you know, they should work coherently. And to retain that coherence and to make things greater than just the sum of their parts, you do want them to be synergistic. You want, you know, if a composer knows they're writing for a beautiful sunlit forest, they do want to draw upon tropes and traditions of what will be evocative of that, and will, you know, the visuals, the visual expression of this forest will seem even more immersive when the music seems fitting for it. The music's going to feel just going to feel right even more when it matches the way things look. They work together. They work as one. But that also, you could say, takes away freedom of the composer in that, well, are they just doing something like, are they writing music to order? Like, and some, you know, composers starting out and struggling do run up against the challenge of like, oh, I thought I'd be able to write more of whatever I wanted artistically, but I do feel like I'm being a little more of a line cook for, I need pieces that sound like these different environments in my game. So there's truth to that, there is, but still, there's a lot of reasons I personally care about game music because I think it runs closer usually to classical music than film and television scores do, which are much more, again, temporally aligned, temporally constrained to the scene going on, to the beats in the story you're seeing. And it can still create a piece that seems like it has a structure, like a piece written with freedom of structure, but it's more coincidental to it supporting what's happening on screen. Unless you have rare cases like films that have been written with the score first and then directed and edited to fit the score, which there are some really fun, fascinating examples of that, but that's clearly the exception to the norm, a total exception. And yeah, games, yeah, they're fitting an area specifically sometimes or an event, but if it's not a cutscene, which most game music is background music outside of cutscenes, you don't know where the player is going to be. You don't know what's going to be on screen. So you can't make it temporally rigid like that because you don't know what the player's doing at that moment. You only know where they are and where the music's playing. So within that space, you actually get quite a bit of freedom to decide some structure, to decide how you're expressing it. You don't have to time anything with the player's actions because the whole point is it's a bit of a sandbox at that moment. Of course, there are games that are like designed a certain way where they are actually quite like temporally aligned with their music, which is very cool. Like think of a game like Sayonara Wild Hearts, like, you know, it's on rails so that everything like hits visually along with the, let me restart this. So everything kind of hits visually with the right points in the music, and it's an audio-visual spectacle that feels all like really in alignment. You know, can be done to great effect. But yeah, just, you know, talking about how games are generally, how music usually works in them, and why I have a lot of respect for it. And they're both are elements that detract from a composer's pure artistic freedom, but I think for the most part, it's an area in which there is the ability for more freedom a lot of the time, especially in these like large budget titles that probably there's a little bit extra respect to allow a composer to take a little bit more risks and to at least, you know, see what they cook up, especially if someone's name carries some cachet. You know, if an uematsu like has an idea for a section that's a little bit non-traditional, probably it's going to be heard out. Anyways, I don't completely know what I'm talking about here, so I don't want to pretend too much like I do. I might sound like I do, but I don't. I could be wrong about a lot of this, but it's the impression that I've gotten. But, you know, I've talked about other things for this piece. Absolutely loved it. I think it was fantastic. I'm really into like how it did eventually become much less of the trope of forest music, as beautiful as that is, but wouldn't give you a reason to listen to this in particular compared to other potentially better examples of the same musical idiom. But in this case, I think it started to stand on its own two legs, and there's some really iconic, memorable moments, and yeah, this is something I would go back to, which means playlist time. I don't think it fits on one of these necessarily. I would not put it under dramatic classical style game music that's trying to come very close to like a classical form. And it's not solo piano. And I almost would put it under the chill nostalgia. I think the same playlist could work with this in it. I think it would be okay with all of these pieces and it wouldn't be jarring, but I think I want a new one. Do I think this piece is relaxing all the way throughout? It does have a little bit of like epic percussion once or twice. It does climax and energy moderately at points. It brings in the sort of horns and the drums. I wonder, could it be in like a peaceful game music section? I don't think I quite would. I think I might put it in forest themes. Is this crazy? Maybe we'll change this later, but I'm gonna try making should I do a one word? Forest core? Woods core? I'm gonna do game music, forest core, and Final Fantasy. I personally like writing out the number just because I feel like I parse it much quicker than writing the Roman numerals. So sorry if that seems improper, but I like to write out the number whenever I catalog stuff about games. and I'm just going to call it the Greatwood. Hopefully it's not misleading with other tracks. It seems like that's also the name of this track. And yeah, I'm gonna make a forest chord playlist, and we'll see. Maybe people will suggest to me some really good forest themes I haven't heard. Like, I think there's probably a really good one from Nier Automata. Another game I haven't played, another game I want to play, and another game I haven't listened to the music from, despite how good I know it's supposed to be. And I think that one has a really good forest theme. So that could be the next place to go. Maybe that'll be what I react to tomorrow, is some Nier Automata. And maybe I collect some forest tracks and I see if I think they're good enough to put on my playlist. And then someday I'll go back and have a wonderful background music of these great forest themes. And just have that mood around when I want to have it. Anyways, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and maybe you'll see me do some Nier tomorrow or soon. Maybe you'll see me look for more forest music. Maybe you'll suggest me some. And I'll see you in my next video. And yeah, have a great day, and thank you for watching.